This is Carlos Aliaga from the online radio show Lejos de la Multitud, and today I have the pleasure of speaking for the second time in the history of this show with the British journalist and musician John Robb, who has just released his autobiography, Punk Rock Ruined, sorry, Punk Rock Ruined My Life and Other Stories, published by Manchester University Press. John, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start by congratulating you since I don't have the physical artifact. I decided to listen to your audiobook version read by you, and it really draws you in.
Oh,
Since
cool. Yeah.
since the
Yeah.
book is not available in Spanish, I'm going to try to give an overview of what readers can find here. To do that, I like to start with the title, which is somewhat ironic, given that in
Yeah.
your case, things went in the opposite direction, opening up possibilities for creativity and liberation. Could you tell us which are the best things that the best tools that you got from punk that punk brought to your life?
Well, firstly, the title is ironic. It's obviously meant to be a joke. And also, I think punk should never take, even though punk is really serious, it should never take itself too seriously. And it should never become so iconic that no one dares to say anything against it. To me, the whole thing about punk was it was always an ongoing argument about how great it was and how rubbish it was at the same time. I loved all that. It was two completely different opinions at the same time. Um, but yeah, it was life changing, and it gave me a space to do the things I wanted to do. And that's that. Not only was it great music, great clothes, a great attitude to life, it inspired you to actually get off your arse and do something. It was really empowering, and to me, that was a revolution in punk. But when I was growing up and I was into glam rock before punk, glam rock was something that other people did. You had no chance of doing glam rock. You couldn't be David Bowie, but punk, you could just be yourself. And it wasn't about a career or anything like that. It was just about just going to do things. You don't have to wait for permission to create. You just created anyway. And a whole generation of people came through with that attitude. And that's, to me, in the end of the day, that was the revolution that made punk so important.
Uh, when I talk about you with people in Chile, I always mention milestones in your career, like your interactions with Kurt Cobain and the Gallagher brothers. However, in this book, I also find some significant events that I wasn't aware of, like your trip to Germany to witness the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's one of the pivotal moments of the book. The audiobook even has some audio effects. Was really well done. But more than just one person's story, this is also the history of how counterculture infiltrates the mainstream. That's why moments like when Alan McGee of Creation Records described his dream of a band that combined the Beatles with the Sex Pistols resonated so much with me. Because that's exactly what happened when later he signed Oasis. Do you think that there is a reason why we haven't seen a shift so big in the culture, such as the one that happened with alternative rock in the 90s?
I think then there was less media. There was now the internet is everywhere. So pop culture is fractured. The story in the 60s and 70s is getting told by a small, in the UK, a small clutch of music papers and a couple of radio DJs. Now everybody's the media. So it's harder for one person to dominate across millions of people all at the same time. There's loads of great music and culture out there, but it's like each one's got its own small little scene around it. That because yeah, definitely because of the internet. And I think also the internet has become the frontline media, right? So in the 60s, it would have been the Beatles and the Stones or whatever. And now it's social media. So, I mean, whether that's good or bad is a different debate, but that's just how it is, like. So people have something to say about the world. They usually go to social media, whereas when I was growing up, it was usually about people putting a record out or how you reacted to a piece of music. So music's become the soundtrack to all the other culture. Gaming's bigger than music, so it's been a whole shift in culture itself, but it didn't mean the music got worse. It's just different.
The details I found most entertaining of the narrative were some moments in the book where you were involved with music, when you were involved with music fans and obscure bands that turned out to be very massive later, like the Stone Roses. It's very hard to capture every brilliant moment in the book, but I made a small list of my favorite interactions when you gave the House Martins some business related advice, when you covered Jesus and Mary Chain shows. That's magnificent. That's my favorite is the time when members of Naval Death handed you their demo, and the fact that they had membranes tattoos. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
The chapter, but there are some chapters that for me are very emotive, magical, like the one where you talk where when you talk about recording with Steve Albini. That's great. That's so great. And also when you went to write about Nirvana, to a Sub Pop gig when they were still with Sub Pop. I wanted to ask you because you met Kurt Cobain, you talked with him, and you also encountered Richie Edwards of the Manic Street Preachers. Both chapters, Manics and Nirvana, resounded because I'm a fan of both bands. But I also wanted to ask you, because you met them personally, if you think there were some common elements in the way that Kurt and Richie tried to deal with the fame and sadly failed.
I think so. Yeah, I think fame's too much for him. I think there are a lot of musicians by nature, isn't it? If you're really creative, you're a sensitive person. Maybe they were just too sensitive for the world. The sensitivity created brilliant music or brilliant ideas in Richie's case. But the brutality of fame, I mean, it's a poison chalice, isn't it? It's partially an escape from yourself, but also it's all a downside, negative side that comes with it. A lot of people can't cope with, like a responsibility as well. All those things make it difficult. So yeah, they were similar in a lot of ways. I think very quite similar people. But the other person I always think is quite similar to Kurt Cobain and also quite different all at the same time is Noel Gallagher. I think Oasis and Nirvana were quite similar bands. They came from similar backgrounds, and they saw music as an escape from those backgrounds to literally to escape to a Nirvana. But when they got there, they dealt with it in different ways. I mean, the Gallagher's completely embraced fame and all its different ways, and for Kurt Cobain, it was too much. I mean, so they both combined the Pistols and the Beatles, as we said a minute ago, in a sort of like, it's never mind the bollocks and melodies for both bands. But one band was Hate Myself and Wanna Die. The other band was Live Forever, and that was a fundamental difference between the two of them. In the end, probably the Gallagher's way of dealing with fame is much more healthy for a person than Kurt's or Richie's way of dealing with it. But you can't help who you are, can you? It's no one knows what it's going to be till you get there. When you get there, it's people do find it very hard to cope with, and there's no escape. It's unrelenting, isn't it? And I think very sensitive people find it difficult.
What you mentioned about the Gallagher brothers, the way that they accepted fame, and that Kurt Cobain was, I don't know if this is the right word, but crushed under the weight of all that expectations of the music business, of the fans. A phrase that really resonated with me on the book was, one of the odd things about punk is the curious mixture of nihilism and idealism. Many people hold preconceived notions about what punk is and what rock music, the life of a rocker, will be, viewing them as merely adolescent fads, or potentially the self-destructive phases. Yet, people like you, and to some extent, Henry Rollins, Ian Mackay, Penny Rambeau, and Jello Biafra, they demonstrate that rebellion can be constructive and intelligent. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think so, but I'm not saying it's the right way, because I have no right to tell anybody else what punk is. It's just my version. This is what I got from punk. Punk for me was a positive, empowering thing. It inspired you to go and do stuff, create. Gave you an unrelenting energy, sort of thing. But and I always think my duty is to pass on that energy and encourage other people to do stuff. And and that idea that you could create something for nothing, amazing. But it doesn't mean that's what punk is. Punk's different for everybody, isn't it? So some people do embrace the nihilism, but some people find something oddly soothing in the nihilism as well. But I don't think it's a good place to go. I think if you get pulled into nihilism, you've got to pull yourself back out again. But I understand how that works. Some of the greatest music in punk comes from it. I mean, the Pistols are nihilistic, but they had to be. They're like a blowtorch to culture. Joy Division, there's a level of romanticism and idealism going on at the same time. So it's so there's no rule book with punk. There's no way you have to be a punk that's right or wrong. You deal with it your own way. It's an indefinable. It's a very personal thing. So my take on punk was it's a positive force, probably to get yourself through life as well. I mean, everybody could be melancholic, but if you believe in a powerful force or an empowering force, it helps you personally and it helps other people as well. Because I think let's keep this revolution going, this creative revolution.
Something that I really love was in the book the description of meeting Johnny Marr when he was working in a clothing store in Manchester. I don't remember the name of the store, X something.
X Clothes.
X Clothes was magnificent because the book is peppered with those small moments when there is a small band playing, very obscure band playing, and wow, it's a band that years later exploded. And also your early interaction with Morrissey at gigs, it's so vivid, it's so vibrant, that sense of discovering new people through music, through culture. Also, this is a question you can elude if you want to, but do you have an opinion on the somewhat divisive, I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, sorry, the stances that Morrissey has taken in recent years?
I still like his music, and I still think live he's a very charismatic presence, and he's still got a beautiful voice. His interviews are a completely different matter. It's I don't really like what he says in interviews. Don't agree with what he says in interviews. I don't think the world needs any more negativity. Coming from somebody who also lives in another country, he's an immigrant as well. So there's different types of immigrants. I just don't get all. It's not my mindset. I don't come from that kind of mindset. I think we're all on this planet. We've got to work out a way muddling along together. And I think putting negative stuff out there, stirring the pot, making people's lives harder is not the way to go forward. Really, I think I'm always waiting for one day when he comes back. Come back, Morrissey. Because in the 80s he was such a great figure, wasn't he? He represented something very different in music, with an extraordinary sensitivity and an empathy which all seems to have disappeared. I really don't disagree if he's right to say it. I think he's got a right to talk shit. That's what I think. So if he wants to say stuff that I don't agree with, my right is to say I do not agree with you, and this is why. But I will not ban. I'm not into banning people. I think you have to get all the opinions out on the table, and then you have to tell people why you think personally you don't agree with those ideas. They're not making things better in the world, So so that's my take on it, And I think the Smiths' legacy is probably these days for a lot of people saved by Johnny Marr, and he's sort of stayed more true to what most people thought the Smiths were about when they started. Saying that, I just don't read his interviews anymore, but I'll go to his gigs and I listen to his music, and it's weird, isn't it? Because on that new album there was these really beautiful tracks that were really empathetic on them, and then he does an interview, you think, is that the same person? I just don't get it at all. But yeah, I'm confused by it more than anything, and I think it's kind of sad that that's become a prevalent view. You see a lot now with people you expected would have been better, years ago. It's people. The world's tough for a lot of people, isn't it? You gotta. It's not what you can do about it, but you can be empathetic. You can understand why people want to do, want to cross half the planet to go live in a country where everyone hates them because where they come from is really crap. And there's always problems. There's always problems in immigration. There's problems. There's problems in the native population as well. I don't see solutions. I want to see solutions to problems. I don't want to see people sending out lists of negative moans and gripes. It doesn't get us anywhere. I want to know what people think the solution is. How do we get somewhere where we can make this better, not somewhere we can make it worse?
Exactly, exactly. Reading the book, listening to the book, one truly enjoys both the writing style and the underlying ideas. It works perfectly, at least for me, from both an artistic and journalistic standpoint, something that resonates very, very powerfully with someone in Chile, particularly right now, given that here we currently have a very far right government that has ordered cuts to all cultural fundings provided by the state. It's like we have our own personal Margaret Thatcher. So, what would you say to people who believe that art is expendable?
Well, it's a fundamental human thing, creating art, isn't it? I mean, from cave paintings to digital modern art, it's part of who we are, part of what we are, part of what we do. Um, um, I think it makes it better if the government provide, because not everybody can afford to be an artist. If you live in the ghetto, you can't spend your whole life trying to be an artist. You got to eat. That's it doesn't affect me because I've got a little space. I can exist in my little art space. But if you're living in a really poor part of Chile and you've got a talent and you can't do it, and it's bad for you, but it's also bad for your country. It puts one of the great things about the UK is we're really good at pop culture. It's our soft power. Everyone in the world, people like you, people like everywhere I've gone in the world, people love British pop culture, and it gives us far higher profile than nearly everything else that comes out of the country. It gives people a good image of England. It's good for the country. It's good for the people living in the country, but it's good for our image abroad as well. These are all reasons why governments should create a space where art can be made. Doesn't that even looked at it in business ways, there's a return on it. You may spend a few million helping people in poverty have a space to be creative, but if they make it a worldwide scale, that money's going to come back in tax. So if you want to look at it like that, yeah. If you want to look at it, it makes people feel good, yeah, that's good. If you want to have something where art's really brilliant, explaining who you are and where you are in the world and why you're here, and it could be done in brushstrokes or two chords. So I want to know what Chile's like from listening to a piece of music that's from Chile. Whether it's Chilean punk rock but done in a Chilean way, the Chilean twist. That fascinates me, that stuff, and it helps put a country on the map as well. So instead of people think whatever came out of Chile, it's just where is it? People don't know that this stuff actually helps people in the world locate a country and a culture. I think that's important as well. And also, it's good for people's heads to be creative and make art, music, whatever, painting, whatever they want to do, and also working together. Which over the years, I love punk rock DIY culture and the idea not waiting for permission to make stuff. But I really like the idea of DIT culture now, which is doing it together. Like working together to make stuff happen, make great art, make a great painting, make a great computer game, make a great cave painting or a piece of music. It's all art. And I just think it's better for society, better for people, better for culture, and better for the world. And it's really short-sighted of right-wing regimes to take art out. Because they don't want art, because they don't want people to think, because people start to realise. The right-wing vision is a very narrow vision. It's a very cold-hearted vision. And art is the opposite of that, isn't it? The two don't fit together, do they, at all? They try and co-opt it and use it to their own ends, but it never works. It never fits, does it? Art's free from all those kind of shackles, isn't it? That's why they don't like it. That's why they don't want to fund it, is it? And this is a battle that goes on all over the world at the moment, isn't it? Where it's push and pull between people for some reason want to go to the right, and some people who actually most people just want to stay in the middle, don't they? And some people on the liberal left trying to push things in another direction. And this is the struggle in every single country. To me, art, in a sense, is probably separate from all this. It can be political, but it's a different kind of political, and it's the politics of possibility. There's no politics of possibility with the right. There's no possibility with the right. But with art, it's about, like it was with punk. You never thought about being in a band, but punk said, "Go on, do it." And to me, that's powerful. That's all you need to. That's kind of message you give out to people. But also, you need to facilitate the space where this can happen as well. But art should never rely too much on government handouts, the government dictating what the art's going to be. It's just about space and a little piece of money, not zillions of pounds, zillions of dollars, whatever. Just a little space where it can exist and catch fire and make things happen.
Exactly. I concur with your evaluation. In the early chapters of the book, you describe your obsession with the future, and you mentioned series like Doctor Who. I think that I'm one of the few people in Chile who know Doctor Who. And there is currently a debate surrounding artificial intelligence. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the risks and potential benefits? Because recently I read an essay by a journalist and writer named Cory Doctorow, who warns that the AI bubble could burst and wreak havoc, like in the financial crisis.
Very similar to the early days of the internet, wasn't it? Because it was boom and bust, wasn't it? But then it became something that's massively part of people's lives, isn't it? So so I think AI will be the same thing. I think there's a lot of negative things with AI, isn't there? I'm speaking as a writer. We can get I'm replaceable. But there's also we it's not going to go away. So it's going to boom and bust and boom again. But we have to own our piece of this. We can't sit on the outside and let all Elon Musk have the whole thing. We got to find a way of owning it ourselves. That's what I think. So how do we do that? There's a lot of things we don't like about it. It steals our art, steals our creativity, it steals it steals our electricity, steals our power, steals our water. There's got to be better ways of doing this. We have to fight to get a version of AI that doesn't wreck the climate, doesn't wreck and also doesn't wreck our creativity as well. How do we do that? I don't know. We have to keep an eye on it, and we have to be involved in it in a sense, and we have to find the smarter, techier friends of ours, and we probably have better tech people than the dark side do, to find out some way we can actually utilize AI in a positive kind of way. I mean, people said all the same things about the internet when it came out in the beginning. People said all the same things about social media. Social media does have a lot of problems, but people all tend to use it. People don't like the technology, but they still use it anyway. So AI is going to be the same. It's not going to go away. So we have to find a way of owning AI, getting our version of AI. That's what I think about it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not going to say that this is it's just not talk. You can't. It's nice words to talk about, but we have to find a way of actually doing it practically. I'm all for taking all the tech, as much tech as we possibly can, from the American tech bros, running our own tech. Running our own social media. Why are we using other countries' social media? It's insane. The same with you in Chile as well. Why is there not a Chilean version? Why we're so tied into the I mean, I love America, but there's a lot of people in America aren't good people. Why are we relying on them for all the stuff that we do? It seems crazy to me.
To wrap up things, I think that the book, it seems very appealing to people interested in journalism. And I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to people interested in keeping journalism alive in the face of social media and algorithms that seem to reward content that is not always true?
Yeah, well, I think that's another massive battle, isn't it? And I think I speak to a friend the other day, and he's setting up a green eco liberal left-leaning media are saying that, yeah, it's good to have newspapers and print media. You need online media, but you also need bots. The media, most of the political debates in this country, and imagine everywhere else, is bots. So in this country they'll go, Keir Starmer, worst prime minister ever. So the bots print this over and over and over again. And then people start repeating it, like, Keir Starmer, worst prime minister ever. I've read that on the internet. But you've only read something that some right-wing person's just, set up a bot thing with thousands of bots repeating the same story. It becomes like this hypnotic kind of mantra. And this is where the media is at now, isn't it? But it doesn't mean we're superfluous. We're maybe on the edge, but we always were. We're always underground, weren't we? We're never in the mainstream of culture. We're on the side of culture. And every now and then we do spark off like a Nirvana that goes into the mainstream and changes the mainstream. But we're never actually in the mainstream. We can sort of poison the mainstream now and again with good ideas, but they don't really let us in that kind of space. But that doesn't mean what we're doing is irrelevant. We're still part of the debate, but from the edges of the debate. And so we have to write on our own terms about our own culture and our own kind of ways. And it's not easy. It's not much money in it. It's hard to get, mass thousands of millions of people to read it, but it does not stop us doing it. And I think that's important. We have to treat writing about music as a creative art in a sense, because it is a creative art. It's not normal journalism. It's done in a very creative, artistic kind of way. And we treat it like that as well. So, a great piece of music writing is as exciting as a great piece of music, and it's they're both art forms. So we have to treat it in those kind of ways. We also have to the role of the music writer has changed as well. I think a lot of time a music writer is also about encouraging a band, connecting a band, putting them in, saying to them, you may know someone does a festival, and you may know a cool new band, say to the festival, get this band on, speak to that manager. We're cultural catalysts. That's what we do now. So I'm sure this is what you already do in Chile. You find a great Chilean band, you get it to all the people on the scene, you can help that band, and you try and take it international, and you don't just play the radio or write about it, you just do all the other bits, It's all about connection, because we're super connected, because we're everywhere, People like us, we go out a lot, we know a lot of people on all different ends, fields of society, and from politicians to, to music people, to authors, we know a lot of people, and this is a superpower, and we can join the dots and make things happen. So we're not just reviewing stuff, basically. We actually are the catalyst.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for this conversation. To people discovering your art, your writing, this is an excellent book. There are so many great anecdotes about the time the Dinosaur Jr. shot the Freak Scene music video in your backyard, playing with White Zombie, the almighty Afghan Wigs, touring with Babes in Toyland, recording tracks for a Chumbawamba Sportkestra project, and that time that you went to interview Fugazi and they didn't told them that you were coming to the USA. Those are magnificent moments. It's very well written. It's very emotive. I know that I use that word a lot, but there are also other books that I will recommend done by you. This is one this is my Bible. This is great. And also, I didn't mention this enough, but when you write about being in the membranes, such a great band, such a creative force, and thank you so much for keeping doing this work. It's extraordinary in all levels.
No,
Oh, a small
appreciate
a small nerd question. You did in the beginning a fanzine called The Rocks. Is it
Yeah,
available? Have you digitalized it? Because I'm reading the book. I wanted to read the Rocks and your early writings on the music papers.
there's little bits of it. If you Google it, you'll find, some scanned sheets of it. I keep meaning, if I ever get time, to scan the whole lot and put it online. So it will happen at some point. Because what's good about it is they're not long articles, because we didn't really know how to write them. But I really like the way we laid it out. It's all little drawings and cartoons and collages. And it's the only way we knew how to do it then. Because that's the thing, there's no template on how to make a fanzine. You just made it up as you went along. But now when I look at it, they look like little art pieces. They look on your eye, they look really good, you know. So they're worth seeking out just because they look quite good, you know, and they're in a very kind of scruffy, kind of chaotic way. They're really cool to look at.
Yeah, because you mentioned some writings you did for sounds and it's not available on the internet. You say, "Damn it, I would love to read like a companion to the book." You know, that will be a great project in the future. Talking about
Yeah, it's fine. It's findable. So a lot of that stuff is up there now, more and more all the time. People keep putting things up.
I
Yeah.
will search for it, and I mentioned to you before. I'll send you an article about new music in Chile, done by the forefathers of post-punk and new wave. I have an article I wrote in English, so perhaps you will like to read it to be aware of what's going on here
Yeah,
in South America. Like you gave us something, we give
definitely.
you something back.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got links in there for the music as well.
Yeah, I'm going to do that today. Okay,
Yeah,
so.
that's good. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much for your time and your writing, and take care.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Yeah. All right, Carlos. See ya.